Hey everybody, back again with Tidewater Gardener. Today what we're going to be doing is transplanting some lettuce, some kale, spinach, and arugula into my cold frame, which is right here. The kale, spinach, and arugula have been growing indoors, and I think it's far enough along in the month where we could put this outside and keep it under protection and everything will be fine. So what I'm going to do is show you how to remove the seedlings out of the flat and then place them back into the cold frame. So again, here's another look at my flats again. I've been able to set them outside. So I'm going to be planting my kale, which is right here, my spinach, which is there, and my arugula, and they're all going into this cold frame right here. Basically, a cold frame is a very small raised bed, at least in this crude form it is. And after I plant everything tonight, I'm going to put the plastic top back over, and just in case it gets a little too cold tonight. But one thing you want to keep in mind with using plastic or anything like that, that sometimes during the day, if it gets up to the 70s, it's a lot warmer inside that, so you want to be able to vent that. So probably tomorrow we won't have to worry about it because it's going to be a little cooler, but I definitely want to keep ventilation. So we're going to address that when I close it up. First thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of just smooth everything out, because when I came through here I didn't get everything perfectly level, so it just makes things easier. What I usually do when I'm transplanting seeds, I usually just try to cut like a little row with my hand. You can use a trowel, or you can use anything to do it. It's just easier for me to do it like this. I'll just cut a row with my hand and do one at a time. If I start doing more when it's time for me to actually cover up the seedlings, you're in the way and you're usually knocking things over. So normally what I'll do is I'll cut like a little trench in here, just karate chop it, and get that ready. So the easiest way to do it is with a plastic fork, and I say that because you usually don't want to use your dinnerware, but I couldn't find any, so don't tell anyone. But basically what you do is you take your fork and you go into your flat and you basically dig up some of these seedlings. So here I got one coming up. What I'll do is I'll place it in here, keep it supported with the fork, and then I will cover it over. Spacing's really not that important at this time. It is later on, but right now I've got so many arugula plants that I'm just going to just evenly space them in this area, and then when they start growing I'll go through and I'll thin them out to the appropriate space. So let me show you a couple more. I'll pull out a couple here. Alright, there's two. So usually I just drop them there and just be very delicate with them and place them in and just cover it up. Make sure that the roots are covered with the dirt. And here's another one. See, I'm kind of off on my spacing a little bit. Like I said, it's not super important, but it does make things look a lot better when you are spaced out. But it's funny, they actually look very tiny in this bed compared to when they're all grouped up like this. So again, I go through and just pick up a couple with a fork. Staple got me again. And then I'll come over here, just lightly put some dirt around it, and so on. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock these out real quick, and we'll get over to the rest of the stuff that I'm transplanting. Sometimes you'll run into the roots are all grouped together and you got two plants. That's fine. I usually just plant two of them together. Like I said, when you go through, you'll just pull them apart. So that one's separate, but those two are grown together. So I'll probably plant them together just because it makes things easier. that's basically it. If you could see that, it's basically however much space you're going to use. Like it says, I'm going to probably plant arugula to about right here, and then when I come through and space it, I'll probably have you know, a handful of plants. But you never know, not all the seeds or not all the seedlings could survive. So that's the reason that you just go ahead and you plant a bunch of them and then thin them out later. I've already planted what I was going to plant. Here's just a, this is how tiny they are. I had to zoom in on it. If I come out, you can't even tell that I've put them in there. So I planted about a foot wide, and when you water them, you want to make sure that you just barely missed it, because right now they're very delicate, and if you go through with a jet, sometimes even a shower setting on your water hose will you know, knock them over, and sometimes they you know, the roots won't make contact with the soil, and you won't have any plants. So just make sure that you know, barely get water on it, but make sure they're watered thoroughly. I don't know if you remember from earlier how many I had in there. I only took maybe a quarter, if even that, out of there, and planted them. So what I'm going to do with the rest of them is I'm going to keep them in here in this pot, and eventually you know, start transplanting them maybe into other pots. Maybe I'll put them in the bigger garden if they get any bigger, and you know, don't throw them away. You can always grow them. One cool little trick that I've picked up along the way, and I'd like to thank you, Mom, is what she does. She just finds a small piece of plywood such as this, and you know, sometimes when you plant, and definitely when you're planting a lot of varieties, you sometimes forget what you planted. You know, you try to write it down, or you try to remember the planting date or all that other stuff. The easiest way to do it is I pull the tag out of the seed flat that I used to mark what it was, and what I'll do is I'll place it on this board, staple it to it. Normally what I'll do is, you know, I'll number it, you know, I put a 1 under here, and then I'll put a 1 corresponding on the bed. That way you can kind of go back and check on anything. But the reason I just put 1 in at the top is because if you want to look at the back, maybe check on some of the germination rates, or if you want to check the spacing for when you come back later, you got your reference right here. All right, well, I've transplanted everything that I wanted to transplant, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close this up for the night. So like I stated earlier, you want to keep a little bit of ventilation. So what I usually do is I put my finger underneath here, and make sure you don't get your finger with the staple gun, but I'll leave a little hole there so ventilation can get in there and we get a little breeze, and then I'll staple it down. This is you know, it'll stay warm enough to where it'll promote growth, but it'll also keep it from getting too cold, because it's still chilly at night. So that's basically how you do it. You just seal it back up with a staple gun. And one thing to be careful about if you're using staples, be careful with the when you go back to you're pulling the plastic off, because the staples sometimes will be attached to the plastic, or sometimes they'll be attached to the wood. And when you get down and you're fooling with it, sometimes they'll nick you, or sometimes they'll catch your sleeve. Normally what I do is I just bring like a little hammer or something and just hammer it down into the wood and get it nice and flush again. I mean, that's the easiest way to handle it. So what I do is and I'm out of staples. That's all right, I've got some more. But basically you've got the gist of it. You keep a little bit here over the night, that way we got a little bit of ventilation. Tomorrow, depending on the weather, either I'll open it up or I'll just keep it closed. But this is a great start to you know, some of the cold crops we're going to be doing. And once it gets warm enough, I'm actually going to take all this off, and it's just going to be a raised bed afterwards. So thanks for joining us, and until next time.